Good evening. Welcome to Growing Local Roots, part of Connecticut Humanities Food for Thought initiative. My name is Amanda Roy. I'm a program officer at Connecticut Humanities. The mission of Connecticut Humanities is to create opportunities to think, learn, and understand more about ourselves, our communities, and our state. We bring people with different viewpoints together to discuss issues and explore new ideas, exactly what we'll do here tonight. So our goal tonight is to learn more about the work that's being done by our featured guests here and to brainstorm ways to engage in local agriculture more closely. So our featured guests will help guide our conversation. I'll be speaking with them about a connection between local agriculture and the economic, educational, and cultural landscape of a community. So I'd like to thank Nevin Christensen and Flamig Farm for providing us this perfect space for tonight's discussion. And also Bill Walsh, who's been doing farming through Simsbury and is now venturing into urban agriculture. Our questions tonight that we will explore is there more to local agriculture than just farmers markets? And how do local farms change our economic, educational, and cultural landscape in our community? So farmers markets bring people closer to their food sources, but we are still a long ways away from creating a local food system. So do we need to create a local food system, and how do we get there? And also, what else does local agriculture do for our state? Is it more than just food? What educational opportunities are there? Just tell us a little bit about what you do.
I was born and raised on this farm. Long ago it was just chickens when I was a little tiny kid. It's evolved over the years. We've produced organic vegetables at times, chickens and pigs for meat. There was a point in time we learned that almost all of our food production was not worth it economically. It was either losing us money or making so little it wasn't worth the effort. And by the grace of God, little hints have taught us that. Had my daughter at ballet class one time, heard two moms talking, and one said, this is when we were quitting all the food production, one said to the other, "Where are you sending your kid to camp this summer?" Camp just kind of rang in my ears, so 26 or more years later, we now have an educational summer camp that brings in, bring in 80 kids a week. They feed all the animals, work in the garden, shovel manure, do all kinds of great things, learn stuff, and pay us money to do our work. It's pretty exciting.
Wonderful.
And we've evolved at this point more into an educational entertainment farm. We have a petting zoo, which does a lot of educating about animals and what it's all about. There's still a lot more potential to expand the educational possibilities there. And at this point in time, it seems like time has arrived to inch back into food production, real life food production. And something that appears to me is that the consciousness has changed. Back 30-some years ago when we started growing organic vegetables, a lot of people didn't know what that meant. Now most people know what it means. The headlines about GMO food and all, people are getting, the consciousness is growing about good food equals health, and on and on. So.
Great, thank you. And Bill?
Oh. Well, unlike Nevin, my family was not in the farming business. I'm actually a native New Yorker, and moved to Simsbury when I was very small, started working on farms, as did most kids our age at that time, and wound up sticking with it, got an education in farming, and ultimately I was here in town in the dairy business for 17 years, and most recently I have been growing some organic vegetables here, but I've also spent 2.5 years down on Long Island reopening a community farm down there, which is very close to the city. So that's been an interesting experience. So I've had kind of a different the group of experiences that put me where I am today, I guess.
Excellent. So Nevin, you have a lot of educational programming that you do here. What has the impact of that been on the community?
Well, the impact on our farm is it's kept us paying the bills. That's been fantastic. Impact on the community, it is a privately owned farm, but it feels, I think, sort of like a community farm to many people. All these kids and many adults feel like that's their, this is their farm. And you know, we promote agriculture, but we're also promoting, you know, we have a big photovoltaic array, so we're trying to show off alternative energy, photovoltaics, solar thermal hot water to solar hot water. We make our own biodiesel, trying to show that you can drive your car on something other than oil pumped out of the ground. And we do a big recycling thing of wood waste that happened by accident. We started collecting biomass to compost to reclaim our soils, because Grandpa had sold all the topsoil because he was getting ready to sell the farm, and that's what you do, sell the soil, sell the farm. And so that's where we're making lots of compost and mulch just from stuff that would have been buried in landfills along with toasters and beer cans, etc. We just stumbled into all of that stuff, just the right stuff at the right time.
Great. Very interesting. I got to see the piles of the topsoil being formed. It was, it's amazing back there. It's mountains. It's very cool. But now, Bill, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you've done a lot with dairy farming and with growing vegetables. Now, what's the role that community members can play in getting closer to a local food system as we try and inch towards getting closer to where our food sources are? How does the community get involved with that?
Well, by, I think, trying to gain an understanding of what's involved with agriculture. I find that people I speak with really are clueless. As you might be with any industry that you're not involved with. You just, you know, you drive by a farm, you go to a farmer's market, but the details of what makes it successful or not, especially economically, I think are important. As Nevin alluded to, I think we are in the middle of a paradigm shift that's been going on for the last couple of years, where back in history, his grandparents found that farming was no longer profitable for various reasons, complicated reasons, which we can't even go into here tonight, but it's shifting now the other way as the inputs, particularly petroleum and the other inputs that go into farming, are becoming more expensive. During the 1950s, the average family in the United States spent about 25% of their income on food, and today it's down to about 10%. And unfortunately, in any economy, if food is too expensive, it's not good, because then you're in a third world economy. But if it's too cheap, that's not good either, because it throws things into chaos. Most of Europe spends between 15 and 18% of their income on food. So food in most of the G8 nations is much more expensive than it is in the United States. So to get back to your point, I think if people are aware that local agriculture is once again making a resurgence, and for real economic reasons rather than just going out to pick a pumpkin up in the fall, I think that's what the realization needs to be.
More than picking up a pumpkin. Are there barriers that are stopping, you know, you mentioned economics, but are there barriers that are stopping more people from getting into farming? Young farmers, I've had an opportunity over the past couple months to meet a lot of young farmers that are trying to make their way up. Are there barriers that you see for new farmers?
I think the land tenure in Connecticut is especially difficult because of, we're still in the, you know, when you're in a paradigm shift, very often people don't realize it's happening until after it's happened, because it's a slow process, like watching an iceberg melt. But you know, the entire real estate situation, where for many years real estate was much more expensive than the ability to carry the crops that were grown on it, and now that's starting to shift again as the demand for real estate seems to be sinking, whether it's arguable whether it's permanent or temporary, but as the value of food goes up, it's starting to, the shift is kind of going on a little bit now.
Nevin, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, definitely, you know, price of land. The price to get into any sort of slightly conventional farming is crazy. The amount of equipment I own that I've accumulated over 40 years is nuts. And but I think what we're seeing is people with a regular day job are going to grow a few chickens in their backyard,
right,
or they still do carpentry, or they're going to grow a few vegetables, or somebody loves blueberry bushes or asparagus. And that type of little niche thing is happening. The number of farmers is actually increasing, but they're all part-time little farmers. But great, you know, the more food we can produce here, the better off we are, economically and health-wise, which ties into economics too. If you eat something fresh picked, full of enzymes and nutrients, versus something shipped in from China or Brazil or whatever. And I oftentimes wonder how they do that. It still looks like a vegetable.
Right.
You're going to keep the money local, and you're going to be much, much healthier. So.
Right. Yeah, I was grocery shopping and came across some frozen fruit that I was making because you can't find berries that are locally grown in Connecticut in December. So grabbed the bag and I looked on the back and it was made in China. So they shipped the fruit in from China. So, you know, being somebody from Connecticut, living in New England, in December, how do we get local food? Is that happening? Is that accessible for us?
I think the ability to, there's a big push now for winter growing. That's a big plus, I think, for this area that may eventually eclipse summer growing. The demand is there, the technology is catching up, and I think there's a good future. And also it doesn't require a lot of real estate, which is important. So I think there's a good future in that, in being able to provide things in what has been the off-season. I'm reading things all the time about what people are doing, and it's really impressive.
And how are they growing them? For those of us who don't know how to
Well,
do that.
they're using what a lot of people would call a hoop house, a plastic-covered set of metal hoops, and they're finding out that temperature is much less important than day length. There's a whole science to it, but certain people are getting into it, and I think as that spreads, others will see that it's a viable option, and it'll continue to catch on.
I want to just add to that, the other very viable thing that's being done is that you'll talk about in-ground growing, which is something that's coming on incredibly strong. There are people in Maine growing stuff all year. But hydroponic greenhouses there are many of those that are, producing a tremendous amount of food. And like he says, the small real estate, you can produce a lot of stuff in a very small space that way.
Could you explain what hydroponic is?
Okay, hydroponics, the vegetables or whatever you're growing are grown, their seeds are planted in just a little ball of stuff, say, and then that stuff is flooded a few times a day, or water with the correct nutrients in it are trickled over it, so the plants get all their nutrients from that nutrient-rich water, and they're fed exactly the right amount of stuff. There are people experimenting with worm castings, worm poop, to see if you can feed the worms the right stuff to make the right poop to grow a certain crop. So there's a lot of neat stuff going on. So it's could be approaching organic or whatever, and we don't have to just use chemical nutrients to grow our food. So.
Cool. Is that something Flamig might do one
day? We have it in our vision, and it's all a matter of time and money. So as funding arrives, we'll that's part of the plan. And that's the type of thing that could be done anywhere. Flat roofs in Hartford could be filled with these, and we could employ people to grow their own food in Hartford, or virtually anywhere. So
that's excellent.
Yeah, it's a great promise.
Yeah, that makes me think about urban agriculture. So there's this shift of growing more vegetables within an urban setting. So you've been working with in Long Island, very close to a city. Could you tell us a little bit about what the vision of that community farm is?
Well, it's a small piece of farmland, 5 acres, that for whatever reason didn't get developed in the last 60 or 70 years, and the people that own it hung on for a long time. They finally decided to sell the property, and it was purchased by the county as open space to be preserved as a farm. And the land trust that I've worked for was appointed with the job of reopening it. It had been closed for a couple of years, and we converted it to certified organic production, and it's a real has a real connection to the community. The surrounding community was very attached to it, as you might imagine, it being the only farm within probably 20 miles or so. And the goal is to use some of this technology that urban agriculture is espousing at this time, and just make it a real community resource, and hopefully it might trigger some more agricultural production. municipally owned open space in that area.
And Nevin and I had a chance to speak before about, the vision of what urban agriculture could look like in Connecticut. Could you tell us more about what that could be?
Well,
I know you could talk forever about it,
yeah,
I'm sure.
I try to shut up. There are a bunch of vacant lots throughout many cities, blighted areas, where you're piling with bricks and rubble. We've donated, I dare say, hundreds of yards of compost to some of those areas where people have created luscious gardens, either in raised beds or just on ground. And that's a tremendous, just the amount of food producible that way. I don't know what percentage of Hartford, say, we could produce food for, but just an aesthetic and a sense of control of one's food production. Seeing that stuff in Hartford has got to be great for the people that are doing it. And then, hydroponics really does have, in my view, potential to create an immense amount of food in a very small space. And like I said, flat roofs in Hartford, if you start looking at that, they shouldn't just be black tarred roofs. They should be growing something, or at least have solar collectors on them. And it's like, it's time. Let's get going.
To move forward. That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna dip into the word culture a little bit. Humanities is all about culture and idea exchange, and so in agriculture, culture is right in there. So how does a local farm shape the culture of a community? You mentioned that people feel like Flamig Farm is their community farm. Has it created a culture within the town of Simsbury that is closer? Are we closer in Simsbury to our local roots than other places in the state?
That's a big one. Certainly the people, we have probably 10,000 people that come here to visit in a year, maybe more. And they certainly do get a chance to, smell the pig manure and get a sense of what some of the stuff that goes on with animals and not so much food production, or quite a few eggs and stuff. The culture overall, I think we're having a little dent with the kids. There are some that, our farm camp is not for everybody, but there's some absolutely love it. They fall in love with it, and we've been doing it long enough now, so some have gone to college in agricultural things.
That's great.
So we're
That's something.
affecting a little bit,
Absolutely.
Big broad scale, I can't say how much, but Simsbury in general likes to pretend to be farm friendly and likes their open space and all that. Pretend might be a key word here. Sorry, Simsbury, but they're not too antagonistic, and they do appreciate the farms.
Right. But it seems like Flamig is shaping future generations in a way by passing down these traditions that are lost in a lot of places.
Pretty much, I'm just letting the kids that would never have the opportunity. Adults my age and up, and say, "Oh, I was born and raised on a farm, or my mom lived on a farm, or I spent the summers on Uncle Joe's farm." That's becoming less and less available to kids.
Now that we've heard from our two featured guests, I'd like to open up the floor to questions from our audience.
I'm Lauren from Simsbury, and it sounds to me like local farming is very much, a grassroots effort, and there's not a whole lot of infrastructure supporting our local farms. I'm wondering if either of you could address some resources that are available to local farmers from the state or national level.
Well, I could say that the state of Connecticut is making a good effort to try to help with marketing. They do have a lot of programs that are helpful. I guess funding is going to be a problem. It looks like it might be going forward into the future here. We do get some opportunities with the federal government for funding some things through the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service. Actually, they've been promoting some of this winter growing by giving grants on high tunnels, which I think there's been about 50 put up in Connecticut right now. So there is some, but there's always an awareness problem. Again, I think a lot of the population considers farming here to be more of just something that's an anachronism and doesn't really have a future. And I think that's probably something that should be addressed.
Now, I'll just add, we are signed up, we've gotten a grant to put up a couple of those high hoop greenhouses, and we want to put them on tracks so they're mobile. And copy the Elliot Coleman growing model. He's up in Maine, grows a tremendous amount of produce on a very, very small acre or small area. And just Bill's comment about people not being aware of how much farming is doing. It's really a substantial amount of money is made in Connecticut from agriculture. And I don't get off the farm much, but sometimes when I do, I'm blown away at some of the things people are doing. You know, there's somebody growing lambs and making some money at it, and somebody growing beef and packaging it and taking it to farmers markets. And I'm just seeing expansion of this stuff. It's really, you know, it's quite exciting. There's a lot of good stuff going on, and so yay.
Thank you.
I'm Teresa from Canton, and I wonder if you could tell us, how can local people who are interested in buying, families interested in buying locally grown produce, or food, not just produce, year-round, find people who are selling to the public year-round, other than going to farmers markets?
Probably through a CSA, that's the easiest way, I would guess.
Yeah, various farms, CSA, community supported agriculture.
That's usually
But
just the summertime.
they're in other states, Massachusetts, and again, I've not been there, but a friend I've talked to that may help us run these greenhouses said there are places in Massachusetts, probably especially around Agawam area, but a lot more of that is being done, and there are year-round CSAs that are doing a lot of root crops, etc., some winter growing things. So that's something that's expanding. You're going to see more of it and more of it, but you know, it's not here big scale yet, but you can tell your local farmer you want to see him do that, or say, hey, I'll flip you $5,000 to do the preparation to put up the high tunnels. He might like that, and then you might have somebody growing vegetables for you in the middle of the winter.
I'm Colette from the Connecticut Farmland Trust, and this question is for Bill. I'm interested in how we can encourage kids to get involved, and I was wondering if the farm that you work with works with the schools at all on any level, and if you think that that would be something to expand in the future.
We do actually work with the schools, although there's resistance because of the mandates about what schools have to be doing now. We do a lot of work with one private school in particular that's very active with our farm. I think that you have to sell somebody either on the board of any given board of education or a teacher or someone to get parents convinced that it's a good idea, and then that it might go from there. But that's the hard sell, is getting the public schools. You know, they complain they have no money, they can't do this, they can't do that, they're restricted by, I forget the terminology, but the coursework that they have to offer, there's just not a lot of extra time to do those things. We do have a vocational agriculture program in Connecticut. Our local one is all the way over in Suffield, so if you're here in Simsbury, it's kind of a deterrent to have to travel to Suffield to learn about agriculture. Those are regional schools, almost like I guess like a magnet. It's been my thought that if any local school systems were interested, but there was, you know, the problem was the logistics of it, that with all the technology today, whether it's Skype or whatever it is, that it could be brought into the local classrooms from the regional vocational school. I'm a little surprised they haven't done that yet, but I think that most parents are so concerned with their child getting into the right school and getting into the right vocation that they're not really interested in agriculture. But if you are familiar with Jim Rogers, who's an international investor, he was a partner of George Soros, he's advising any college students to go into agriculture because he thinks it's going to be the next big thing. And this is a guy that, he's a multi-billionaire. He's based in Hong Kong now, but that's what he's recommending, is go into agriculture.
If I could just add to that question from a different perspective, and that is the way that agricultural farms benefits wildlife in terms of water management. They help control flooding, which preserves different environments, protects wetlands, etc. Also, farms help maintain the air quality for everyone, not just humans, but also animals. So there's that.
And they, you know, they help with the environment in many ways. That's been our focus here, try to, you know, recycling, etc. And economically too, I mean the tax base, farmers don't pay much in taxes, but they use less than they pay in, which is different from most residential communities. I approached the town and said, look, I could put 20 houses on my farm. If I do, they'd be $500,000 houses. You'd take in around $200,000 a year in taxes, right? And yep, people at town hall will do a quick calculation in their head. I said, okay, then we're going to educate 2 kids per house, although it's 2 point something, and we're going to plow snow, provide police, and you're going to spend $300,000 to support that development, right? They looked at me like, what? Over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, we set up committees, commissions, studied, and found out that that's correct. That's the way that actually works. So just another benefit of preserving farms. You know, it's food, environment, taxes, all of that. So they're good. I like farms.
Go ahead. I have to think about that.
A lot of stuff is going on as far as farmers markets. Farmers will transport. There are farmers markets in the cities. That's a good start, but it's tiny compared to what needs to be done to get a good food, quality food to the people in Hartford or whatever city it is we're talking about. So I foresee the urban growing. You know, whatever way we can start growing stuff in there. And as more and more niche farms show up, we're going to see more and more stuff appearing at these markets. So, you know, there's a certain, well, some people travel 100 miles or more to go to a farmer's market in New York City. It varies on demand and prices available. So just the consciousness changing, for one, people demanding more stuff. They're willing to pay a little more. People will drive farther to truck that stuff into them. So it's going to be an evolution. Our food system is so entrenched. And you know, there's neighborhoods that the only place you can buy food within a mile, I guess, half a mile, I don't know what the distance is a convenience store, little tiny markets. And as the consciousness changes, we're going to see that all change. It's going to happen.
Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
You know, it might be wise for perhaps either the city of Hartford or the state to sponsor an indoor year-round farmers market. That's kind of a problem. Obviously, standing in the middle of January outside somewhere is not really conducive to selling retail, but if they had, as do other cities in Europe and so on, they have indoor farmers markets that are year-round, and I think that might be something that would be very helpful.
I mean, one of the things I truly love is, you know, during my summer camp with the kids, when they have one of those aha moments about how something happens, you know, they're like, you can just see their eyes light up. You know, some education, some learning has taken place. And we need millions and millions of those moments, and we'll create as many as we can.
That's great. Bill, do you have any final comments?
Just to say that it seems that change is coming, and I think people should be open-minded and aware of it, and just realize that our food system is very, very fragile, and it doesn't take much to upset it.
Well, thank you both for joining us this evening, and I want to thank everybody that's here today and everybody who's watching. We are going to continue this conversation on Earth Day here at Flamig Farm, so we'll be talking a little bit more about growing local roots. Thank you.
That would be, you know,
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.